Hello there, my fellow Mouseketeers. My name's Steph, and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things Disney. We all know the story. Michael Jackson was the king of pop. Disney is the king of entertainment. On the surface, they seem like two completely different worlds. One defined by moonwalks and musical masterpieces, and the other by fairy tales and theme parks. But if you look closer, just like the rest of us, you'll find a lifelong obsession with the House of Mouse. Whether it was private tours of Disneyland at 3 in the morning, to starring in one of the most expensive 4D films ever made, Michael's life was linked with the fantasy world that Walt built. In today's video, we're going to be diving into the connection between the world's greatest entertainer and the world's most favorite mouse. To better understand this connection, we really have to take a deep dive into Michael's philosophy. As we all know, Michael Jackson started his career at a very young age. He was a child musical sensation along with his brothers in the band, the Jackson 5. As a result of this, Michael Jackson was unable to have a normal childhood like most normal children would have. You know, there was tough rehearsal schedules, gigs everywhere. He really never had a chance to be a kid. And, he was always playing music, rehearsing, practicing dance moves. He couldn't even go outside and play with the neighborhood children without being punished because he was trying to achieve this massive dream. And as we know, Michael has famously stated that he never really had a childhood. And he always felt that Walt Disney was a kindred spirit. And as we know, Walt was someone who built a world where you really never had to grow up. And, this really resonated with Michael. In my opinion, Michael Jackson is a prime example of a Disney adult. Michael, he didn't just visit Disney. He studied it. He embraced it. He reportedly even used Disneyland as the blueprint for his own Neverland ranch. He always wanted to capture that Imagineering magic for himself. He even hired former Disney designers to help build his private sanctuary. As every Michael Jackson fan knows, the 1980s was the decade of Michael Jackson. There was so many central events in his career that happened during this decade, and honestly, just the release of the Thriller album alone made him a powerhouse. But that wasn't the only magical thing that happened for Michael during this time. In the mid-80s, the ultimate crossover happened. Captain EO. This wasn't just your ordinary music video. This was a 17-minute 3D space opera directed by Francis Ford Coppola and produced by George Lucas. Yes, that George Lucas. Talk about a powerhouse team. And at the time, it was the most expensive film ever made on a per minute basis. It costed roughly $17 million. And at the time of this video, that would estimate to over $70 million. Captain EO featured Michael as a galactic commander using the power of music and dance to defeat an evil queen. This experience ran at the Disney parks for over a decade, and it still remains a cult classic. And just a little fun fact for you. Michael Jackson actually requested Coppola and Lucas personally. And as we all know, Michael always dreamed big, and he always wanted to go even bigger than the last project he completed. So he didn't want Captain EO to just be a little commercial type ordeal. He really wanted a cinematic revolution, and he got it. As previously mentioned in the beginning of this video, Michael Jackson is and probably will always be considered as the world's greatest entertainer. And as you can imagine, with this level of fame, Michael couldn't exactly walk into Disneyland and take a stroll down Main Street, USA during regular business hours. You could probably guess, fans would probably mob him very quickly and everything would just become a madhouse. And based on the type of person that Michael was, I feel like we can all agree that he would not want this to happen at all, especially at one of his most favorite places on Earth. Legend has it that Michael would frequently call up Disney executives to request private late-night tours. He would wander the parks around at 2 in the morning, and he would ride Pirates of the Caribbean and Peter Pan's Flight over and over again in total silence. I know this may not be the typical experience that most people would want to have with the Disney theme parks, but for Michael Jackson, this was his magical moment, and he enjoyed it. So, good for him. Though he would visit Disneyland through these private tours throughout the night and early morning hours, that doesn't mean he never actually went during the day. As we know, there was times that Michael Jackson would use disguises. He was probably considered a master of disguises. Whenever he would want to go out in public to do somewhat normal things, he would always wear some type of disguise. This wasn't any different for whenever he wanted to visit Disneyland during the day. There was once an instance that he reportedly wore a full prosthetic mask and a janitor's uniform just to enjoy some popcorn while watching a Disneyland parade. I know it may seem strange to some people, but if wearing a disguise to Disneyland was his way to try to find a little bit of peace and joy with something that he really loved, good for him. Because we know that Michael, he always loved his fans, and he always wanted to do whatever it took to make them happy, keep them entertained, and, Michael deserved the same treatment as well. Just like every relationship out there, it wasn't always perfect between Michael Jackson and the Disney Company. It was actually reported that Michael campaigned heavily to write the soundtrack for the Hunchback of Notre Dame. However, the Disney executives was very cautious of all the media attention that Michael was receiving at this time. So they declined his offer. And I'm not going to dive into the allegations of Michael Jackson on this channel, but I feel like Disney made this decision on a business outlook. As we all know, Disney is one of the faces of family-friendly entertainment. It was a foundation that Walt built on many years ago. And, whenever we see Disney, we know that, it's always going to be clean. It's going to be wholesome. It's something that the whole family can enjoy. And unfortunately, with these allegations that was surrounding Michael, this would have been a very bad business decision on Disney's part. Because Disney has always been very careful with the choices that they've made. And one slip up could, cause a lot of problems for the company. And as we know, Disney isn't a billion-dollar company for no reason at all. They know what they're doing. With all that being said, I do not believe for 1 second that Disney's decision had anything to do with Michael's talent or capability for this project. We all know that Michael could have easily created a beautiful soundtrack for a Disney movie. And with Michael's love for Disney, he would have gave it his complete all for this project. And it truly would have been magical. Personally, I've always found the Hunchback of Notre Dame soundtrack to be one of my all-time favorite movie soundtracks. And, it's just so beautiful, and I really feel like it's an underrated masterpiece. So I am very curious to hear what a Michael Jackson version would have sounded like, and I feel like it is truly one of the biggest what-ifs in Disney history. Years went by and the influence between the two never left. After Michael's passing in 2009, Disney brought back Captain EO for a limited run as a tribute to the artist, proving that the bond between the King of Pop and the Magical Kingdom would never be broken. Overall, Michael Jackson and Disney were both built on the same foundation. They both believed that the idea of imagination had no limits. Whether Michael was dancing on a 3D screen or wandering around an empty theme park at night, he always found a home in Disney's world of happily ever after. Did you ever get a chance to see Captain EO in a Disney park? Or what Disney song would you have loved to hear Michael cover? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe, and make sure to hit that little bell icon to be notified for the next magical adventure. Alright, thank you, and I hope you have a very magical day. Bye!
See you real soon!